What was the most WTF thing that a customer brought into a second-hand shop? I worked at a weapons shop, and a shady-looking guy brought in a few pairs of night vision goggles, like high-end military-grade PVS-14 night vision goggles. I asked him why he was selling them. "Oh, I just don't need them anymore." "Oh, cool, man. Do you mind if I call the company real quick and run the numbers? Sometimes this stuff is stolen property." As soon as I said that, he jumped across the counter, grabbed the goggles, and bolted for the door. A guy brought in a stack of about 15 laptops that all said, "Property of Cleveland Public High School," right on the top of each one. He then threatened to shoot me when I told him to get out. Okay, because people are asking, yes, I'm aware that schools and businesses can sometimes sell off old laptops, which is why I don't flat out call the cops when someone brings in suspected stolen items. There's always the chance that no matter how obviously stolen it is, the person owns it legitimately. However, I'm not going to risk my job or my conscience by taking an item if it has a label on it claiming it's someone else's property. Also, how am I supposed to sell a laptop that says "property of city, public schools" on it? Pawn shops have a bad enough rap as it is. I know a few guys who've run these sort of shops. One thing I've seen was a guy who brought in smoke grenades and M249 saw belts that he had stolen from our local military drill center. Another was a guy at a local weapons store who brought in a piece that had an illegal oil filter suppressor on it. They told the guy to get the frick out and go destroy that thing. A buddy of mine worked at a pawn shop for a few years. They had a guy try to sell them a police walkie-talkie, like straight stolen from a car but with the battery taken out. They told him to get effed and called the cops. I believe they picked the guy up a few hours later. This just reminded me of my friend who pawned the DSLR camera I let him borrow for a school project. I asked for it back a good amount of times, and not once did he tell me what he did with it. I had to hear it from someone else, and then he claimed that I gave it to him. A man brought in a bag of white snow and asked if I would buy it, then resell it back to him in a couple of days. Bold plan on the part of the seller here. Unfortunately, there's no further detail as to whether they called the cops on them, but there is a pretty funny follow-up comment. "Hey boss, this guy just sold us like 10 kilos of white snow and wants to buy it back in a few days." Weird, what's the point in exchanging 5 kilos of substances back and forth? Is this some sort of scam? I don't know. When he comes back to pick up his 2.5 kilos, we'll have to ask about that. Not an owner, but I got a call from a pawn shop saying that one of my at-home employees tried to sell her work computer. It has my company's logo and contact info right on it, plain as day. How stupid can some people be? A school security guard pawned his service weapon and other equipment. He got caught by his supervisor carrying around a pellet shooter. I knew someone once who was into some bad stuff. He didn't have his school-provided laptop at class one day, and never again after that. As it turns out, it was his, for these laptops were indeed our own personal property, even though the school, quote, gave them to us. But the thing is, what they meant by giving each student a nice free laptop was overcharging the mother effers ×2 and building it into the price of tuition, and therefore the student loan. So I had that computer for a while, and he sold his to a pawn shop. How many college students do you know who would refuse a new MacBook Pro back in 2010 that they wouldn't have to pay for until they began paying back their student loans? A guy literally brought in a rocket-propelled grenade launcher. He was doing yard work for this old lady whose husband had passed. She gave it to him for doing some yard work, not realizing it was live and active. The guy was career military, and after the bomb squad came and disabled it, they went to her house and found a trove of similarly very illegal military-grade weapons. Just a worker at one of these stores, but we had a couple come in to pawn their backhoe over the weekends. Happens a lot, and brought their bill of sale. They wanted a simple $1,000 loan, which wasn't bad considering how much it was worth. No more than 30 minutes later, cops are there with the owner. Apparently they worked for him and went and pawned all of his industrial equipment. In a similar vein, my friend found some green herb in the oven he brought from a used appliance store. The shop called him to ask about the oven. Luckily, he didn't give out his address. I literally had a customer come in and say, "Hi, I've just stolen this phone off my sister. How much will you give me for it?" Also had a customer bring in 5 MacBooks at the same time with a certain logo on it which gave me the impression they were stolen. I told him to leave them with me for testing and called the police. Had another customer bring in a gun and a crossbow. That was weird. I'm in the UK and this is not a normal thing. Story from the 90s. My Fender Stratocaster was stolen and I reported it. Couple of years passed and an officer called me. Your guitar serial number showed up at a pawn shop. Great, so you know who stole it. The guy who sold it at a pawn shop said it was a present from his girlfriend, but she died. Okay, so I get my guitar back? No, the pawn shop already sold it. Don't they have to check serial numbers? Yeah, but that can take 30 days and we can't expect them to hold on to this stuff forever. What? So what do I do now? Nothing really. So why are you calling me? I just thought you'd want to know. Bye. True story. Most stuff isn't even worth the time to report it stolen. You always got to look out for the people who bring in a crap ton of brand spanking new tools or electronics. Over time, you learn to read people based on their appearance, behavior, and personal information. An experienced broker can almost always immediately sleuth out whether they're stolen or not. In these cases, they mostly are. I've never had someone intentionally bring in illicit items, but it's important to check pockets and compartments on cases and similar things. It's not unheard of for some eclectic customer to forget about a little baggie of green herb that they'd stashed. One guy paid off his loan with cash, and there was a thin layer of white residue coating it. The first time I'd seen that one. And not illegal, but toward the beginning of the coronavirus outbreak, some wisecrack nutcase did try to sell us disinfectant. Funny, but also annoying. I wonder if that last guy had acquired all of his before eBay and Amazon had stopped letting others price gorge off them. If so, double screw that guy. I had this guitar that had a little sliding door on the side, meant to hold picks. I put green herb in there as a joke. I completely forgot about it as I was selling it. They were pretty chill. Oh god, there was this one really weird guy who brought in a dead duck while hunting is illegal in my area, and also just why? Wouldn't call this illegal per se, but I feel like I have to share this. A friend of mine owns a pawn shop, and one day a guy walks in with a cardboard box filled to the top with his own number 2. He claims that it's magic, and my friend cuts him off right there and kicks him out. As he's walking out, he drops the box by accident and gets all of his crap on the floor. Sees the mess he's made, stares at the horrid pile of feces for a couple of seconds and runs out of the shop. My friend never got his name and never saw him again. The smell would proceed to linger in the shop for a good month after it was cleaned up. I was in the US Army from the early 1990s until 2014, and I knew a guy like this in about 1993 or 94. Our whole unit moved from Fort Lewis, Washington, down to Fort Polk, Louisiana. This genius goes into the little local town and gets a Radio Shack credit card because active duty military members were pretty much immediately approved because of our guaranteed monthly income. Smart guy comes up with a great plan to buy a bunch of stuff at Radio Shack when he needed a few bucks, then take it down the road and sell it at the local pawn shop. It was all new equipment in a sealed box, so the pawn shop gave him about 15% of the retail price for everything he brought in. He just figured that after a few years, he'd be making enough money to pay off the credit card bills, or that the credit card company would just drop the charges? He was such a screw-up. He was being processed for discharge and he didn't even realize it. The last I saw, he was getting kicked out with nowhere to go afterward. I felt bad for him, but at the same time, I liked seeing him get messed over for knowingly messing over the system for so long. I was in a pawn shop when this happened. Someone brought in a wheelchair with the tag for the local hospital on the back. Example, property of somewhere hospital. The pawn shop owner told him to leave it and get out. They did, and he called the non-emergency line. The police came and picked it up and took it back to the hospital, or that's what they said they were doing anyway. A friend of mine owns a shop. One day a woman walks in and asks if there's a female employee she could talk to. No problem, it's a family shop and his 18-year-old daughter comes out to help her. She asks to go out to her car where she opens the trunk. Whole thing is packed with bedroom toys, bondage stuff, outfits, and a big box of phallic items. The woman says her sister, who recently passed away, sold this stuff at parties, and she had no idea what to do with it. I used to work at a pawn store. A shady guy brought in a tiger skull. I don't remember if it was illegal or not, but the owner was yelling at him. He kept coming back and bringing animal skin and skulls. I think the police substance busted his house, from what the owner told me. A friend of mine owns a rather unique store with a lot of authentic medieval weaponry, armor, clothing, and similar. While I was there, a young couple decided his shop was the place to sell a few old SS daggers, belts, flags, and other Third Reich memorabilia. Solid logic, except for one thing. We're in Germany. Here, the state kind of frowns upon either owning or selling this stuff. They could have donated it to any museum and would have had no issue with the law whatsoever. I mean, it wasn't their fault they found it, right? But they figured that if Grandpa was from that particular organization, he could at least help with the funds for the renovations, and decided cash was better than being named in a museum leaflet. My friend was mostly insulted by the idea. That's just because he owns a medieval store and sells historic weapons. I mean, he must know a collector for this sort of stuff that would pay cash, but that was the end of it. He told them to get out and donate it. Or if they insist on selling it, ship it to the US. More money from history buffs, or at least not one happy little German extremist with a new happy stabby toy. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I was on the receiving end of someone selling my stolen stuff at one of these stores. We had our house burgled in the UK. Me and my dad went to some pawn shops to give them a list of everything taken. While we were in there, someone came up to the counter and started unloading a bunch of stuff they want to sell, and it was our stuff. We got into a major incident inside the shop. The jerk manager of cash converters was saying it's nothing to do with him and to take it all outside. Sorry buddy, but when you're happy to buy a camera full of someone else's family photos, a laptop, and a bunch of other electronics from two junkies who look like they're homeless, no teeth, obvious signs of substance use, among other things, then it's absolutely 100% your problem to deal with. The police were called, junkies charged with handling stolen goods, and I got charged with attacking them. That was later dropped. Nobody charged with the actual burglary, so no real punishments for anyone involved. I don't know if it's necessarily illegal, but one time a guy brought me a handful of human teeth with bloody roots and gold fillings. He wanted me to extract the gold. I said, no thanks, bro. Even as a guy who works on a channel where we read objectively bat-crap crazy stuff all the time, I have to admit this one was a bit of a shock. So do people just think that all people who work at these shops are criminal fences or something? An MP40. Not actually me, but my significant other. He manages a store owned by a national chain. He brought it in on pawn, and as with all neat things, he was just waiting for the loan to drop after the 30 days of payment before the item went out on sale. At this point, he could purchase it. Now, I'm not a huge weapon historian, but I know the era and style and had to ask, that thing is super rare if it's not full auto. When a weapon is taken in on loan, the weapon is run, not the person, so our state's Bureau of Investigation was notified of its existence. Not only is a federal stamp for automatic weapons expensive as frick, it's also difficult to obtain, so he was no longer going to purchase it. And it's a good thing, because shortly after, the gun was seized by ATF, which is when we found out the actual worth, $10,000 to $20,000. Original owner brought it back as a war trophy, and the son is the one who got a loan, for like $200, but it was never registered, so it was contraband. I don't like pawn shops. My buddy had his surfboard stolen. A few weeks later, he found his board in a pawn shop. My buddy approached the staff and said it was his and that it was stolen. The staff then told him he had to buy the board back if he wanted it. The police were called because the board was reported stolen. Upon the arrival of the police, my buddy learned he still had to buy back the board if he wanted it back and then file a claim with the state to get his money back. Why does the state cover pawn shops selling stolen goods? Really nice old-looking farmer man walks in with a shotty with a barrel way too short. Long story short, boss brought it off him and immediately called the local police department to tell them. The cop asked if you could just remove the barrel and dispose of it as it was too much paperwork and hassle to come down and get it. The local police department are a fricking joke. A TV was stolen from my dad's office and sold to a pawn shop. This had been happening with yard decorations, and our neighbors told us what pawn shop to look at. Sure enough, it showed up, and at first the manager wouldn't provide any info or even care that we thought it was stolen. My dad then offered to buy it and requested that the TV be plugged in to check for defects. It worked just fine, and my dad said he'll take it, and then pulled the remote out of his pocket that the thief didn't take and turned the TV off, proving it was his. The manager then had to call and report this. Turns out accepting a TV without a remote is a red flag that he missed in this case. The manager quit, but the general belief was that he knew most of the stuff he was selling was stolen. but he fudged paperwork to keep the thief's identity a secret. My dad put him in his place and humiliated him in the most simple way for being a lying prick. My friend's dad works at a pawn shop in a crappy area and has had some crazy stuff come in, mostly stolen weapons and tools, but the story he likes to tell is when a homeless guy tried to sell a sawn-off shotty covered in tape. They called the cops and the guy tells him he found it in the park. A block away from my high school was a pawn shop. It was announced that everyone in the entire school was going to get a Chromebook to do some schoolwork. On the first day that we got the Chromebooks, it was rumored that multiple people had brought them to the pawn shop to make a quick buck. I asked my teachers who was in charge of all the Chromebook repairs about this later, and he said that only one student had actually done it that he knew of, and he used the money to buy green herb. When my first fiancée and I parted ways, I went to go sell my ring. She'd given me her ring back, so I went to pawn them because I was broke and I got so many dirty looks for selling an engagement ring. I think they thought I stole it despite what I told them, but them's the breaks, I suppose. One of the guys who worked at the place told me that someone brought in an F-box, a decent-sized box that has a switch on it that turns on a motor inside that has a connection to a toy that thrusts in and out of a hole. I saw a guy in my local store bring in about 3 automatic weapons with the ammo and about 10 grenades, ready to use. Not sure if it was illegal or not, but it made my antique Hot Wheels collection look like crap. I work in a store. Not really illegal in itself, but probably the most contact with law enforcement that I've had. I live in the UK where we have to put the serial number of any technology through a police check before paying the customer. We put it in and it flagged as wanted by the police. Within 10 minutes the police were there and asking us to hand the phone over and talk to the guy. We hadn't even gotten through to them yet on the phone. From what I understand, the guy brought it online a few months back. Unfortunately for him, the phone was wanted in connection with a murder. The look on that poor guy's face. That is a really unlucky eBay case that my dude there got himself. Don't you hate it when you try to be thrifty and end up being taken down to the station for an intense questioning and then they keep your damn phone? My house was broken into years back. They stole very particular items. My mum's laptop, which was hidden under the couch, our great-grandmother's jewelry and such. My laptop, Wacom pen tablet, and iPad were all sitting on the kitchen table, and the only thing they took was my iPad and the pen to my Wacom tablet. They left my laptop and the tablet itself. Remember these points for later. The cops couldn't find any good prints to run through the database, and no one was immediately found as a suspect. Fast forward a few months, my brother manages one of the biggest pawn shops in our city, and he called me to tell me that some guy just tried to pawn my iPad. The guy handed the iPad to my brother turned it on and the home screen is set to a picture of me and my nephew. Brother tells the guy that he has to take it to the back and check the serial numbers after getting the guy's driver's license. Brother calls the cops and then comes back out to tell the guy that he has to keep the iPad because it's stolen property. The guy books it out of there, but he wasn't very bright. My brother has all of his personal information. The cops did an investigation and come to find out this guy is the head of a large substance and theft ring. His cronies steal things and they have to give him the stolen goods, and then he gives them the substances. Well, a few more months go by and we found out that our mum's best friend's boyfriend was the guy who put the hit on our house. He had an oxy problem due to a bad back surgery and a substance-dealing doctor. When the doc cut the supply, he turned to other means. It wasn't him that broke in or stole our stuff, however. He just knew that I used my computer for my job and made sure they left my laptop and stole my mum's. He and his boss, along with multiple other addicts and career thieves, were brought down by my iPad. The cops said they'd broken into an estimated 300-plus homes and had stolen millions of dollars in property. I work in one, and honestly, you just never know what's going to come through that door. Former employee. The most illegal thing brought to my shop was an 8-ball of white snow. He wasn't selling it but wanted to buy a digital scale, and he brought the ball along just to test the scales we had. Aside from that, a chainsaw. Although not illegal in itself, they used it to threaten me, which was pretty illegal. Pawn shops in a big metro get pretty crazy. I had this street rat named Tintin bring in a purse with fresh bloodstains on it. I used to work in a pawn shop that was just for tools. This guy brought in these really nice top-of-the-line wrenches to sell. He said business was booming, and I asked what he did, and he said, "You really want to know?" In a scared kind of way. I was like, "Yeah, I'm just making small talk," and he said he was a substance dealer. So I said I don't want the wrenches, they were probably stolen. I used to work in an electronics or DVDs games secondhand store, and we used to get people in all the time selling what were blatantly mass-run bootlegs. Hundreds of copies of the same DVD, which under even rudimentary inspection didn't come off a proper print run. Heck, if you popped one in a player, it usually just cut right into the movie a few seconds in or something like that. That and people who had just stolen crap from a first-hand retailer nearby and were busy tearing the packaging off in the damn queue for the registers. One of my friends in high school somehow managed to steal several laptops from cash converters. Got away with it too. That was until they tried to sell one of the laptops they stole back to cash converters the very next week, with the CC sticker and barcode still on the bottom. He was quickly caught and they found his whole stash, and he did 100 hours of community service. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, or if you want some vibey music to put on in the background, check out easymode. If you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. Everything linked in the description.